Hello, everybody. I'm assuming I'm live. I'll give myself a second to see my face pop up on the stream because I am watching the chat for this. And there I am. Hello, everybody. Now, for real. Thank you so much for coming to my panel on Line Them Up, Paper Mario and the Origami King concert. It premiered last night, and I'm sure most of the people that are watching this have probably already seen that. But if you haven't, I highly recommend that you probably just skip this panel and go watch the video right now because that's going to be better use of your time. So I will keep an eye on the chat as best as I can to answer questions along the way. But if I miss anything and my co-collaborators that were on the production team are in the chat as well, if you want to answer any questions that I don't see, like feel free to sidebar and stuff. I won't be offended. I'm way too panicked and scared to even notice. So I really appreciate you having my back. I am more nervous about this panel than the actual video, so bear with me if I have a bit of a nervous laugh. I also didn't time this out, so I have no idea how long my presentation actually is, so we might be moving kind of fast. So let's go. Line Them Up, how we made the Paper Mario the Origami King music video. I also wanted to call this panel Panic Mario, because that's a little bit how this process felt, at least at the start and definitely at the end. But what I really want to talk about is lessons I learned in leadership, collaboration, and personal growth for me as a person and a musician and a leader, because this was my first time directing a project like this. I've only ever served as like a co-director in other projects, and my responsibilities in that regard, everybody be nice to me. Thank you, everyone. I see all your support and I really appreciate it. My responsibilities in other projects were usually just arranging pieces and keeping track of like the musicians that I was directly working with. So this is the first time I was working on something so huge. So I had a lot of learning to do. So let's dive right in. First of all, who am I? This is a picture of me actually directing this project. I am Laura Intravia. I am a video game composer and arranger. I'm also a remote recording artist. I'm best known for my work in that regard, I think. You've heard my vocals on games like Destiny and Destiny 2, Code Vein, Darksiders 3 are a couple. I also play flute, mostly for indie games, which is a lot of fun. Electronic wind instrument, and I do some voiceover as well. My early career in video game music began as a live concert performer. I toured with Video Games Live for about 9 years, and I guested with Pokemon Symphonic Evolutions and Journey the Game live when it premiered at MagFest in 2016, I think. I'm also a core member of the awesome ensemble Disco Cactus, which is a video game music ensemble that we do like really wild arrangements of video game music. We have a lot of fun with that. I also moonlight occasionally as an opera singer when I can find the opportunity to perform roles of mostly like new music and contemporary works. And I also daylight as a liturgical musician and music director. So that translates to I am a church organist, and that's what I do for my day job, which I think is important for people to mention, because a lot of musicians that work in games also have what's called a correlating career, and I think it's cool to be proud of that instead of like pretending that I don't have to support myself through other means. So I'm a legit opera singer. Thanks, Piano Ostrich. You're a legit opera singer. He's not an opera singer, actually, but he's a great pianist. So let's dive right in. What is the origin story of this project? It's the same as that of most collaborations, I think. You play the video game, you enjoy the music, you get the great idea, and then you ask all of your friends about the crazy idea. Wow. Stay up until 2 a.m. brain dumping the names of every video game musician you can think of, and then recruit friends and colleagues with similar interests with whom you recently collaborated and had a great time. So what does all this mean in the context of this project is that me and Doug Drumultima and Sam Bobinski, we were playing Paper Mario the Origami King over the summer, and we just loved it. And I would put the soundtrack on when I was doing like chores, and I literally physically could not sit still. Like the music was so fun. Like, it just made me happy, you know, and it had already been a pretty tough year by that point. So it just was stuck in my head all the time, and I couldn't believe like just how thrilled I felt listening to it. And I thought it might be a fun thing to collaborate with the Game Brass, which is another awesome video game ensemble, because we in Disco Cactus had just collaborated with them for a track on their album Brestino Isles, which you should check that out, and also the rest of their albums. And I thought this might be a fun way for us to collab back with them and try to do something on like Disco Cactus's YouTube channel. And the longer I sat thinking about it, the more I got attached to the idea of asking more and more people to join in, because there were so many iterations of like particularly the battle theme in Paper Mario, with all these different styles and like instrumentations and genres, that I thought, oh, maybe we'll do like a big like medley of the, battle theme or something, and we'll get a bunch of musicians together to each cover, each segment of that. So I told Sam and Doug about this, and that's when we stayed up until 2 a.m. one night just listing every video game musician we can think of, because at this point the idea had grown into, how many people can we get involved on this crazy thing? Like, why don't, and I remember saying, like, we could call it, like, line them up, and we could, like, put all the musicians together in different, combinations, and not tell anybody who's playing with who. We could keep it a big surprise and everything. So we met with the game brass and asked them if they were interested, and a couple of members signed on. And from there, we took off with this crazy plan, and that was in the end of August, early September of 2020. So before we move on, why do we do this to ourselves? Why do we decide to do these gigantic collaborative projects? Because this is not unlike doing a collab album or a fan-arranged album, which is where you get together like hundreds of people to arrange music and get together performers to record it and so on. There's a couple reasons why. The first is that it's fun. Obviously, it's fun. Another reason why you might want to do this, like either running the project or participating in it as a recording musician, is for networking. You might make some new friends, and you might find new collaborators that you'd have fun working with that have similar interests and tastes as you. You might also do it to build your reputation as like a reliable and talented musician that people can count on, because it's very common for, like, at least in the video game industry, and I think this is a wonderful part of our industry, is that we're very community oriented, and a lot of people from the fan community go on to have careers in this. And there are many composers with whom I work now professionally that I connected with on like these free fun collab projects and so on. So this is a really great way for especially like younger and newer musicians to the community to connect with people and potentially find like lifelong collaborators. That's how I met Theophany, for the record. I've been working with Jason for like the last 10 years because we both worked on a Metroid album years ago, and it's really cool. So another reason why is to do something for the community. I think this gets missed a lot when people talk about like putting these together. It's completely worthwhile to talk about and consider like giving a gift to the community that you love so much. This is like, it's not just good for the community, it's good for you and your soul. This has a transformative effect on you as a person. I liken it to like donating to charity or like volunteering your time. To just give something freely to other people is always a worthwhile endeavor, as long as you don't hurt yourself, which I'll get to later. And you might do it to learn some new things, personal growth. And that's certainly one of the biggest reasons why I wanted to tackle this. It was mostly community for me. I really wanted to do something to brighten everyone's lives. And that was certainly true for everybody on the production team as well. They were super into the idea of just making something lovely, for the community to enjoy. But I also was really excited to learn how to be a director for the first time. All right, we're at 8 minutes. I'm doing okay. Let's proceed. So our project goals early on, and you're going to see how much this changed as we went through, is we wanted to make a roughly 20-minute through composed medley, 20 minutes. We wanted to make this community-oriented in that we weren't just trying to ask like the most well-known musicians around. We wanted to make sure that we were including familiar faces in the community. And diversity. So this was something, I want to preface all of this by saying that I have absolutely no like professional training in diversity initiatives and so on. So if I use any language that is offensive, I welcome you to email me and tell me how I can improve that. We wanted to see how much we could live up to our progressive values of diversity being important. Whoa, look at all those people in chat. Whoa, look at all those people! Oh my God! Welcome everybody to Panic Mario Lessons in Leadership and Growth. Wow, okay, so perfect. we wanted to, we consider ourselves to be progressive people, and diversity is something very important to me, not just as a woman, but just in terms of like all of the type, I enjoy a lot of privilege. I'm a cis woman and I'm white, and I wanted to use my position of privilege to try to highlight more musicians that I didn't know. It's so hard to talk about this serious topic when I'm seeing nothing but hearts in the chat. Oh my word. So we wanted to make that a goal, and I personally thought we should try to shoot for 50% equality, equality of representation goal for both racial, ethnic, and gender diversity. And our purpose and our message was that we wanted to make something that would fill people with hope. We wanted to make something that was uplifting specifically. Thank you, Ro. I really appreciate that. Yeah, and actually, to the point of diversity, when we started out with just the Game Brass and Disco Cactus, we were a whole lot of white people, and we really benefited with bringing on more like members to the actual production team that were from differing backgrounds. It added so much perspective, and they were so freaking talented. And like, I'm so glad that we took the time to like add more people, because it made the project so much better. Thank you to Final. I appreciate you noticing that. Let me take a minute to look at the chat for a second, because I'm seeing all of this blow by. I think that's what made the video feel so all around wonderful. It was truly diverse, and everyone was working together towards something fun. Thank you, Piano Ostrich. I really appreciate that. Like, that was the goal, and I'll talk a little bit more about how we did with diversity later. But I'm really thrilled to hear that that was something that resonated with people, because I wasn't really sure if we had made enough of a difference. So anyway. Moving on. So what are our immediate challenges in working in this particular project? Because it is different from making a fan-arranged album. In the cases of like fan-arranged albums, usually you are just you are recruiting a ton of arrangers who then go out to find their own performers, and then you just kind of hope that everything comes together at the end. You do various check-ins along the way. And if people have to drop out, you usually can't really replace the track, and you just kind of let it go. Immediate challenges for us was that we were trying to make a cohesive arrangement that would have no breaks. We didn't want to make like, just a set of songs in a row with like breaks in them. We wanted the pieces to connect to one another. So if somebody had to drop out or had an emergency or something like that, we could not just remove that segment and just keep pushing on. We had to really make sure that every segment was ready to go. Hey, Tommy Rose. What I loved is that it didn't feel forced. You were bringing together all these amazing musicians. Oh, thank you, guys. I can't stop it. Just stop it. It's being too sweet. So cohesive arrangement was a challenge, because we really had to be on top of our game when it came to the arranging and getting all of our pieces done at the same time. Nobody could really afford to fall behind. The number of players, we asked way more. I was hoping for like 50 on this project, and we ended up asking like 209 people, and only maybe like 25 of them turned us down, and 15 of them like gave us a maybe. So like we ended up with literally double or triple what I was expecting for this project. So woo! Technology, we were working with a lot of musicians that didn't necessarily have the same backgrounds in recording technology as people that work in the video game industry frequently. Like, we were asking people that just like video game music or enjoyed playing with us. So not all of them had the experience, and I can say personally, I certainly lacked the experience for like video recording, and a lot of musicians didn't have much experience with using green screens or anything like that as well. And while we didn't make that mandatory, a lot of people really wanted to try because they wanted to make the video look really great. So we had to put all of those different pieces and recording qualities and video qualities together to make this happen. Our time limit was an issue, so we were originally planning on debuting this at a different video game music convention that would have been held in January. So we had a very tight time limit where, like, we could delay it. You know, if we really ran into a problem, we could delay the project, but we didn't want to because it would be more important to like debut it at a big event. Budget, we didn't have one. Scope creep, man, when you've got a project this big, you start piling up the ideas really fast. I learned this term from Nabil Ansari, who was our mixing engineer. The more you add to a project, the more you want to add to it. So we just started piling up ideas for animations and things that we wanted to incorporate, and it became really difficult to suss out what we could actually make work and so on. And lack of precedent. I don't know of any other video that combined this many people with this many like varieties of music and did it all like remote recording. Like not a single person was in the same room as each other. So we didn't really have anything to go on except our own experience as arrangers and our best guess. So part one, I usually think of as the big oof in my mind because we had a pretty rocky start, and this is when I learned a lot of really important lessons. Our original timeline was that September was our soundtrack deep dive. We were going to choose the themes, assign sections to different arrangers. October through November was musician recruitment and arranging period. That was a huge mistake that I'll get to in a minute. November 22nd to December 14th was when the musicians were going to record. We would mix in the month following that, and then we would release it on January 25th. Oh boy, we didn't do any of that. So let's see what happened. What went wrong early on? So recruitment versus arranging periods. This was a huge mistake on my part at the beginning. So I had decided that we would arrange all of we would start arranging at the same time that we would be recruiting musicians. Many problems with this. One is that the arrangers don't know what to arrange for because we don't have a final list yet. I was still asking people. And also, having them at the same time means the arrangers don't know what they should be focusing on. Should they be focusing on helping me recruit people, or should they be focusing on like trying to get their arrangements ready to go so we'd be ready to send out parts when it was time to do that? And what happened was that a lot of the arrangers were already stressed out trying to figure out what to arrange for, and I was stressed out because they didn't have time to help me because they were trying to figure out what to do with their arrangements without having any guidance. So a lot of the recruitment was falling on my shoulders, and I didn't want to ask them directly to help me with this because I didn't want to overload them with too much work. But I was suffering because I was spending so much time researching and trying to find new musicians and trawling on YouTube and Facebook and looking through like video game music, like arrangement competitions on YouTube to find new faces and so on, and looking up contact information for people. You can see like how stressful this was. And I was spending 8 hours a day trying to find musicians that could collaborate on this. And I felt like I didn't want to ask them for help, and I tried to strong arm my way through it. And actually that goes to the second point, which was that we didn't have an established recruitment team. We established an arranging team and a video team, didn't establish a recruitment team. So when I would say, hey, I need more help, like when I would post messages in the Discord, like I'm hoping people can volunteer to help me, nobody really knew who I was talking to, you know? So it's not their fault. It wasn't that they didn't want to help, but there wasn't enough specific guidance there. We didn't have a confirmed final length, which when we realized it was 40 minutes long, I think that was very late in the game. So nobody knew exactly like how many musicians we would need to not overload anybody. Like we were originally thinking we'd have everybody record like 30 seconds to a minute. We definitely had some people record like over 6 minutes of music for this because we didn't know how long the pieces were supposed to be. That is the worst time of year to try to do any sort of project, and I will sing this to the mountains. Do not try to do a mega collaborative project like this in the months of November through February. Even if you're doing a Christmas-themed album, record it in July and then release it 6 months later. You will thank me later. And then the last point is the biggest one. Not even remotely enough time to get any of this done. Like having 1 month to put together the mix and all of these videos for 40 minutes of music is ludicrous. So that was the first lesson I learned, is lesson number 1. You can't do everything. And by you, I'm talking about me. When things started falling behind, I started putting pressure on myself to pick up the slack. And I didn't want to let the team know that anything was going wrong because I could tell like we were definitely not on task with some of the stuff that we had set forth, and we were going to miss some deadlines. And I was starting to panic a little bit. So I tried to make up for this by putting even more of my time into the stuff, into the tasks, I should say, without asking anybody for help or without saying that I was getting scared that everything wasn't going to come together. Which leads to lesson number 2. There is no passion project that is worth immense mental and emotional suffering. We have a big problem in this industry with crunch because we become super impassioned about our projects and we don't want them to fail. We want to just put in more and more work. We're artists. We love doing this. But at the point where like you are actually like suffering, your health is suffering because you're trying to get your project off the ground, whether it's paid or a passion project, I do not support moving forward with any project where somebody is now in pain because they're trying to get this thing done. And we were finding ourselves in pain. Like, some of us were really falling behind and getting crushed with day jobs. And some members on our team had major life things going on. Like, one of our team members was moving between countries. Another one was like starting to get into the process of like buying a house. You know, we were starting to really feel crushed by all of this. Signs you should delay your project include 50% or more of your team falling behind on like specific deadline tasks is always a good sign. When you have like 75% of people are like basically on the ball, you can like maybe eke it out. But when you have half of the people falling behind, that's a really bad sign. When people start going quiet in your Discord or your Slack, that's usually a sign that they are stressed out or otherwise like occupied. General project goals, this is more vague, but are consistently not being met. That like in a general way, you just don't feel like the project is coming together the way you hoped is a good sign. And I think probably the best sign is when it's the night before Thanksgiving and you're baking an apple pie while not feeling so great is the best time to decide to delay your project. And that brings us to lesson number 3, which is honesty all day, every day. You owe it to your team to be honest about everything, like whether the project is going good or bad. And even if you have like the most good intentions in the world, like you just want to, you know, make sure the project goes off without a hitch, and you don't want them to know that it's going bad because you want to keep them all happy. You know, like that's like a positive intention, sort of. But that's destructive. It's not only destructive to the team because they don't know what's going on, but it's also destructive to you because now you're putting pressure on yourself to, like, you know, lead them to believe that everything's going fine when it's not. So, lesson number 4 is also related to this. Everything you do sets an example. So I had unwittingly created a culture when I wasn't admitting that I couldn't keep up with the work, that nobody else really necessarily felt comfortable saying that either. You know, like if you as the leader don't feel comfortable saying, I am not doing well, I need help, say the same thing. You know, you're the leader. Everybody is going to, like, whether these are your best friends in the world or like brand new people you've never collaborated with, they're going to look to you to set an example of how they should behave. So at that point, whoops, hold on. There we go. We had a meeting. I got to speed things up. Okay, so we had a meeting after Thanksgiving. I wrote a big message in the Discord where I said, we have to delay for the following reasons. Like, this is happening, this isn't happening, this is going wrong. I feel strongly that you know, we're not going to make it and that we need to regroup. So we had this great meeting after Thanksgiving. We canceled our plans. This was really hard, but we canceled our plans to release at the January convention because we just felt like that was not going to be a product that we would be happy with. We moved our deadline, or excuse me, our release date, that should say, to February or later. We established a new recording period that would be in January, which was better for the musicians. We reassigned some of my arrangements I had stupidly signed up to do, thinking I would have the time, to other arrangers on the project. Contacted all of the musicians, all of them, all 169 of them, to make sure this new timeline was good to go. Established a recruitment team and gave ourselves a recruitment period deadline. We gave ourselves, this was a great idea that Thomas Kresge had, we set a deadline for when we would no longer ask anybody else to participate unless we had a part specifically that was written that we needed a player for. So, this is related to the recruitment period. Lesson number 5 is diversity does not just happen. So if you really want to have diversity on your project, like in a meaningful way, you really need to establish like a task force to address this. So like I made some bar graphs on this free website called metachart.com. So we didn't completely fail in our diversity goal because we improved what I think could have happened. I watched a lot of mega collab videos before we started this to see what the general breakdown was of these, like, you know, videos where you get together like a ton of like superstars in the industry and do like a giant medley. And it was usually like the diversity of both racial and ethnic and gender diversity was usually at like a 10% level. So I didn't do these bar graphs right because the percentages aren't there, but we had about 30% racial ethnic diversity and 30% gender diversity. But I want to be clear here, like the column that's labeled POC, people of color, that's lumping literally every non-white category into the same category. this looks really bad when you divide it up amongst all of the different representation we have there. So this is just to say, like, we have a lot of work to do in this industry. And if you really want to make a difference, you have to address this like as its own task force and have people that aren't, or maybe not even arrangers on your project or like video editors, but to just ask some people like, help us find musicians so that we can highlight new people and get new faces in here and find like new wonderful talent. I should have done this in a different order, but our gender diversity as well. Like, as you can see, we didn't do terribly with cisgender men versus cisgender women, but we definitely did not have a great showing of gender diverse people as well. So again, just to say that we should dedicate a huge amount of our time and focus if you really want to make a difference with that. Let me check the chat real quick. Woo, I'm talking real fast. So thank you for saying that, Rick Lloyd Music. I'm so happy we're talking about this on this level. This makes me incredibly proud. I really appreciate that. Okay, thank you. Thank you for, I'm glad this is going well. I was nervous talking about this because I know as a white person, this is not necessarily something that, or I should say, like, as a person who has not had very much like training and experience in this, and also as a person that enjoys white privilege, I'm not necessarily the best person to talk about at least racial and ethnic diversity issues in our industry. But I think the least I could do is use this position to say, we have a problem. We need to get more faces into this industry and find more diversity that way. So, part 2, dawn of a new year. Let's see what happened with that. Whoops. Okay, there we go. Back on track. What could go wrong? We have a new plan. Doug Perry approached me about putting together this entire convention that we're at right now, which was wonderful because now we had an event with which we could release this video again. Nabil talks me into Airtable. Okay, so I'm going to skip to the next slide for a second. We had a major like organizational success with this. So this is Airtable. It's like a database thing I think that Google runs. And this helped us organize all 500 tracks we received from musicians. I truly think Nabil maybe saved my life by telling me about Airtable because I don't know how we would have kept track of this like beforehand. And he had tried to mention this to me a few times throughout the project and I kept like brushing it off because I don't know how to use Airtable. If your team is suggesting something multiple times, you should take them up on it because they obviously care about this and obviously think that it would add something to the project and make life a lot easier. Absolute MVP, Nabil. 100%. We sent out our parts basically on time on January 2nd to all of the musicians. So this was also a thing that I thought was maybe a good thing. We gave everybody a deadline, but internally we had another 2 weeks after that deadline sort of baked into our heads as the unforeseen circumstances period, where we would be able to accept audio from people who had fallen behind due to emergencies that they couldn't control. So we ended up getting about 80% of the tracks and video by the deadline that we'd asked for, and a few people fell behind because of like unforeseeable circumstances. And then following that, we would have about a month for a video editing period, which is still not enough time. Let's see. What can go wrong? Everything can go wrong. So here's some of the things that we ran into. Medical emergencies, family-related emergencies, weather emergencies. Remember that blizzard in Texas? Moving and buying a house, getting absolutely destroyed by day jobs is something I ran into more than once. School being back in session, holiday celebrations, government-mandated COVID lockdown and quarantine orders, which completely stalled out David Wise for about 2 weeks because he literally couldn't record saxophone while everybody was like locked inside of their homes. And this I did not see coming. Apartment building noise ordinances, which you can thank for me playing almost every piccolo part on this project because a few people had to drop out of their parts because they were going to like get a complaint from their neighbors if they were practicing piccolo. Oh man, that was something I didn't consider. So, mixing and editing period, we got off to a bit of a rough start. 12 musicians dropped out due to emergency. We were missing key audio and footage from the other delayed musicians. Not every arranger had Melodyne. This was something we should have checked with everybody from the start because we had to do a lot of cleanup and micro-alignment between all of the different parts. Our video editing, sorry, I'm talking so fast, guys. I definitely should have timed this out. Our video editing process was very iterative, so we kept making like versions of files rather than like sitting down and having a meeting where we discussed like what we should do with the videos and what they should look like. And while we had a hard deadline for February 7th, we received our final video and audio on February 28th because, and this was lesson number 6, I did not enforce deadlines and collaborators want deadlines. We had a lot of compelling reasons to allow deadlines to slide because I didn't want anybody to miss out on this, especially if they were going through like major emergencies. And some people just couldn't catch a break. Like they had emergency after emergency, and I didn't want them to just fall out of the project because of things they couldn't control. But ultimately, there has to be a point at which you do say there is like a hard deadline. And that's actually what February 28th was. At that point, the video editors and mixing engineer were like, you need to get the last things to us because we're dying over here. So you need to definitely enforce that.
Should keep going, save Q&A for Discord.
Okay. So, 2 weeks to go. Arrangers had already I color-coded this one for you. Arrangers had already been collaborating directly with Nabil, our mixing engineer, to achieve the right sound for their segments, which was good. This saved a lot of time on Nabil's part with trying to read scores and figure out, like, what he should be focusing on in terms of which instruments to highlight and so on. So this was a really good measure, and we did this via voice chat. We were all on Discord, and Nabil would stream his mixing process so that we could see his computer and everything that he was moving around. It was a wonderful collaboration, and it was actually Nabil's idea to stream everything. So, like, again, MVP Nabil all the way. However, we had Nabil begin mixing while still missing some key tracks, which was not great because Nabil ended up having to undo some of his work based on the tracks that we got in. Video editors had been mostly left up to their own devices when creating the videos for roughly the first half of February, which is fine at first. They need to put something down on a template for us to be able to like comment on it and find direction. However, we never held, arranger and project director did not directly work with the video editors or start offering comments until like the last 2 weeks, which is very bad because now you're asking the video editors to undo work that they thought was maybe gonna stay there. And then finally, the icing on the cake was that we never had any meetings about storyboarding the videos or the nameplating via timestamps. So the nameplating meaning when everybody's names would pop up, which was a really important thing to us because we wanted to highlight everyone's names in the videos because, you know, not everybody reads the credits and so on. This was a critical error that led to us undoing tons and tons of work a week before we had to send the video off to the folks at VGM Together. So if you're ever planning on doing something like this, for the love of everything holy, please sit down and have that meeting before you dive in. Here we are at the home stretch. We had 1 week to go, as in 1 week before VGM Together starts. We discovered that Nabil is an incredibly talented 3D modeler and animator, so we started adding this Olivia animation, which added time to, like, you know, how long things would render, but we felt like it was worthwhile, but it was another thing we had to worry about. We reassigned one of our animators from some of our like more fun animation ideas. We were in throw everything overboard mode at this point. It was like, if we don't have time, we're cutting it and we're going to focus on something we have time to do. So we reassigned Jeff Fugelsang, our animator, to focus on nameplate and art rather than doing our like additional fancier animations. We had to remix several of the tracks with the missing audio that we had attained. We redistributed video editing tasks because one of our editors had to drop out on some of the projects, and Ro Panaganti put forth an absolutely heroic effort pulling those videos together at the last possible second. And we went through the massive, massive, massive process of reworking video edits to include the nameplates. I cannot tell you how many hours went into figuring this out, and it would have saved us so much time if we had done it earlier. That brings us to final assembly. So here we are. It is the day before VGM Together is to begin. We had spent the last 3 days, like, spending anywhere between 6 and 8 hours at our computers trying to suss out the final edits and add, like, our final animations and so on. And on this final day, Thomas Kresge and Ro Panaganti stayed up until 5 a.m. putting the final touches on this project. And it wasn't just them working on it. Even us collaborators, the arrangers that were already done and the video editors that were already done, we stayed on voice chat with them as long as we could to help them make this final push over like the finish line because we were so close at that point. And it was really like a team effort at that point. We were all trying to keep each other company and keep Ro sane while he was putting all the videos together. And we handed off the video about 2 hours before VGM Together started on Friday. So this is lesson actually number 0. This is my entire theory of how we were able to pull this off. And I feel really bad that it took so long at the beginning because I'd love to talk more about this. And after the panel, we can move to if you're in the Discord for VGM Together, there is a panels discussion channel where I'm going to hang out for about half an hour afterwards if you have any questions for me. because we're not going to have time to do the Q&A after all. So lesson number 0, I really think this is key to directing any project, is before you direct, you must protect. It's not just about telling people where to go and what to do and how to accomplish it. It's about giving them a safe environment in which they feel empowered to do those things. This is something that this is the opposite of crunch, right? Like crunch is not an atmosphere where they feel like they have any power. Crunch is not, a way for people to feel like they are in control or like even necessarily proud of the project they're making. And like, yeah, at the end of this, we were in a bit of a crunch mode. Like we were putting in huge amounts of hours. And sometimes that happens when you have an emergency. And if everybody agrees that we want to try to push this over the finish line, then like, I think it's okay as long as everybody's on the same page and everybody's like put forth their, opinion on it. It's like, yes, we're agreeing to put our heads together and just, push our way through. But I think at the very least, if you're going to ask somebody to do that, you owe it to them to be right there with them. So like if you're going to ask your video editor to spend 18 hours like editing a video together, you should stay with them on the voice chat at the very least to keep them company and let them know that you're there. That's what it means to be a director, is that like there's 2 styles of leadership, right? There's like boots on the ground where you're like in the thick of it with everybody, which is good because like you won't lose perspective on the difficulty of what you're asking them to do. And there's also like higher up leadership where you're like from a better vantage point. You're not doing any of the tasks on the ground floor, which is good because you have perspective on the whole project. But sometimes you can lose perspective on how difficult it is, the task that you're asking them to do. So I think a mixture of both is always a good idea for any director. And that's where I think it's so important to consider like basic things that you can do to protect your team, checking in with them frequently. If you know someone's dealing with an emergency, get ahead of it. Ask them if you can help. Ask how you can help all the time. Use language that empowers them. Ask if a deadline is reasonable. Ask if goals and deadlines sound fair. Be with your team as much as you can. Other hot tips I learned along the way is that you can be an admin and an artist on a project, but one will severely limit the other. Do not take on so many artistic tasks that I did. Like, if you want to do an arrangement on a project like this, sure. But don't take on any other creative tasks because you already have too many things on your plate. Like, as a director, it's really hard to be like an admin person when you want to be an artist person. But like, if you want to be a leader, you just have to commit to it because your team needs you to be sharp and needs to be on top of that. Apologizing is not a weakness. If you make a mistake, apologize for it. I do not subscribe at all to the philosophy that like apologizing would demonstrate that you're a bad leader. I think that's garbage. Diversity doesn't just make a better environment for your collaborators. It makes you a more effective leader. Absolutely. Like, especially for me to see like other to see other women on the team makes a difference for me. I feel like I belong here as a leader more. That's something I wish I had more time to talk about, but maybe I'll do another panel later. And your team's varied experiences are the best tool you have, and ask for their opinions as often as you can. And the last lesson is number 7. Forgive others and yourself for all of the mistakes you make along the way, because ultimately your focus should be here. It's not about you dumping on yourself for making errors. It's not about you feeling bad because you didn't get it right the first time. The goal is to make the special thing for the community that you love. And you can't do that if you're just blaming yourself all the time. You'll never get anything done. And that was a big thing for me to learn. I love all these people. These are all the people on the production team that made this possible. Please go and find them on Twitter and YouTube and so on and follow them. And let's elevate their art even more. Like, they put so much effort into this project. It's actually kind of insane. Like, I don't know how we all survived this with our sanity intact. But here they are. And they all did an absolutely phenomenal job. So here's all of my contact information. I'm so sorry that I blew right through the Q&A period. We have 2 minutes left. But I will be in that panel's discussion room if you want to join the VGM Together Discord. So if you have any questions, you can ask me there, or you can use any of this contact information here to reach me, and I will gladly answer your questions as honestly as I possibly can. Thank you so much, everybody. That was a really, really big, fast blitz through a lot of like heady discussion, and I really appreciate you all being here for this panel. You made it so much easier to get through all of this info. I will answer questions until they tell me to shut up. Let's see what we got. Oh, thank you so much, everybody. I really appreciate your support. Oh man, you guys are the best. I really appreciate this audience and everybody who watched the video and recorded for it. I'm sure we have tons of musicians here in the chat right now that contributed to this, and like this quite literally wouldn't have been possible without you. Like, what good is this idea if I didn't have such amazing friends and community to, you know, reach out to and participate on this with me. I miss all of you so much, and that's really what the project was about, is that I really look forward to the day that we'll all be together again. And I hope you do too. Oh, thanks, Danny Music. I appreciate that. I'll have to go back and scroll through the chat later to see what I missed.
Can you introduce our next people?
Yes, absolutely. So next up, we have two performers that were on the video, and they are two of my favorite people in video game audio. They are McAfee and Justice Stramp, Musical Moose, and they're going to be talking about... let me get the title right here. Let me make sure I don't blow this. Getting into video game music as a budding musician. They are two absolute tour de forces in the video game industry. They are part of VG Lead Sheets, super talented performers and arrangers, and they also run Jam Clinic at MagFest, if you've ever attended that. And I, for one, am super, super stoked to hear what they have to say. So again, I'll be in panels discussion if you have questions, but otherwise, I'll see you in the chat for the next panel. Bye, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. It's Rainbow Road, it's where you go. When you die, you are a toad.